In this enormous open landscape, where there are almost no trees to hide in, a tiny predator has found a very different way to survive. It doesn't build its home in the branches. It doesn't wait for darkness to hunt. And strangely enough, its world begins beneath the ground. This is the burrowing owl, one of the smallest owls of the prairie, and one of the few that spends much of its life on the ground. But surviving here is not easy, because in an open landscape, there is almost nowhere to hide. For this owl, home is not a tree. It is a tunnel beneath the earth. Burrowing owls often use abandoned burrows made by prairie dogs, ground squirrels, and other burrowing animals. But before choosing a home, the owl has to make sure it is safe. The entrance is inspected, the surrounding ground is watched, and every possible danger must be considered. Because this underground chamber will soon become more than a shelter. It may become the center of an entire family. Once the site is chosen, the owl begins preparing it. The burrow may be cleaned and modified until it becomes suitable for nesting. From outside, it looks like nothing more than a small hole in the ground. But beneath the surface, there is another world. A narrow passage, a hidden chamber, and a place where eggs and young chicks can be protected from the harsh prairie above. But the owl has another unusual trick, one that seems strange at first. Around the entrance, the owl may scatter pieces of animal dung. Why? At first, it seems like a strange choice, but this unusual behavior can actually help attract dung beetles and other insects, and those insects can become an easy source of food. Instead of searching the entire prairie for every meal, the owl brings potential prey closer to home. For a small predator living in an exposed environment, saving energy can be just as important as catching prey. Then the hunt begins. Unlike many owl species, burrowing owls are often active during the day. And instead of relying entirely on flight, they spend much of their time on the ground. The owl watches, waits, then moves slowly through the grass. A grasshopper suddenly jumps. The owl reacts instantly. It lunges forward, and the hunt is over. But not every attempt succeeds. Sometimes the prey escapes, and the owl simply starts again. Because on the prairie, failure is part of survival. But the prairie has another rule. The hunter can become the hunted. When danger approaches, the owl may suddenly freeze. Its body drops low. Its movements stop, and its natural brown and white markings blend with the soil and grass. For a moment, the owl almost disappears. It doesn't need to be the strongest animal on the prairie. It only needs to avoid being noticed. Then the season changes. Spring arrives, and the quiet burrow becomes the beginning of a new family. Courtship begins with behavior rather than bright colors. The male approaches the female. He displays his pale throat and body markings. He bows, he calls, and sometimes he offers her food. If the pair bonds, the real work begins, because soon the underground shelter will be filled with new life. Deep inside the burrow, the female lays her eggs. The number can vary, but a clutch may contain several eggs, often around 7 to 12. For roughly a month, the female spends most of her time incubating them. She must keep them warm, she must remain alert, and she cannot simply leave whenever she wants. Outside, the male has another responsibility. He has to find food, again and again. Because now, he isn't hunting for just one owl. He is feeding an entire future family. Then, the silence beneath the ground begins to change. Tiny sounds come from inside the eggs. One by one, the chicks begin to hatch. They are small, weak, and completely dependent on their parents. They cannot regulate their body temperature properly. They cannot hunt. They cannot defend themselves. For now, their entire world is the warmth of their mother and the food brought home by their father. Every successful hunt suddenly matters more than ever. But the underground world cannot protect them forever. After only a few weeks, the young owls begin appearing at the entrance. For the first time, they see the world their parents have been preparing them for. The sunlight, the wind, the grass, and the danger. They watch their parents carefully. Every movement becomes a lesson. Every sound becomes a warning. And soon, they will have to learn one of the most important skills of all: how to find food. The young owls spend much of their early days watching. Their parents hunt. The young observe. An insect moves through the grass. The adult reacts, and the chicks learn. Eventually, they try it themselves. The first attempts are clumsy. A grasshopper escapes. Another insect disappears into the vegetation. But every failure teaches them something: when to wait, when to move, and when to strike. Because hunting is not simply about speed, it is about timing. But food is not the only lesson. The young must also learn when to hide. A predator can appear without warning. One moment, the prairie is quiet. The next, everything changes. The young owls freeze. Some disappear into the burrow. The adults remain alert. For these chicks, every escape is another lesson in survival. And every day they survive, they become a little more prepared for life on their own. Weeks pass. The chicks are no longer helpless. Their feathers are fully developing. Their movements become faster. Their flights become stronger. And they begin spending more time away from the safety of the burrow. Soon, they can hunt for themselves. The underground home that once seemed enormous is beginning to feel small. The prairie is waiting, and each young owl is slowly preparing to leave. Eventually, the moment arrives. The young owl leaves the familiar burrow. It will have to find food, avoid predators, choose a territory, and one day find a mate of its own. The home that protected it through the most dangerous stage of life is now behind it. But the story isn't ending. It is beginning again. For a while, the burrow may fall silent. But on the prairie, silence rarely means the end. Another owl may eventually discover the same underground shelter. Another pair may move in. Another clutch of eggs may appear. And another generation may begin the same dangerous journey. Birth, growth, hunting, danger, independence, and eventually, a new home. From above, it is just a small hole in the ground. But beneath it, an entire story of survival has unfolded. The burrowing owl does not dominate the prairie with size. It survives through adaptation, through awareness, through patience, and through a home hidden beneath the earth. Because in the wild, survival doesn't always belong to the strongest. Sometimes, it belongs to the animal that knows exactly how to live in the world it was given. And beneath the endless prairie, the little owl continues to watch. If you enjoyed discovering the hidden world of the burrowing owl, subscribe to Echoes of the World, because across our planet, there are countless animals surviving in ways we have barely begun to understand. Subscribe and discover the next story hidden in the wild.